What scientific breakthrough are we closer to than most people realize? Story 1. A cure for symptomatic rabies. Using monoclonal antibodies, scientists were able to alter the immune response in rats' CNS significantly into infection. You can read the study here. This is awesome because before this treatment, once you showed symptoms, you were essentially dead. Rabies is also a lot more common in Asia and Africa, with roughly 56K cases a year. Story 2. Edit. The publication in question left out an important element that needs addressing before we can raise our arms in excitement. Response: Substack EQ precursors. Not so fast earthquake warning system up to 2 hours. Permanent GPS antennas are located all over the world and more densely at fault zones. About a year ago, geologists found that if they stacked all historical GPS data proximal to large earthquakes, they saw there is a very small acceleration of the surface about 2 hours before the actual earthquake. We are literally only missing the technology to make even more precise GPS measures, so we can do this in real time on singular regions. It is proven that this is an actual thing that happens, and we can literally warn of earthquakes with a significant time span. And the land movement is so subtle that only by lumping all the data together did the precursor stand out, Blettery says. If you just remove 1 or 2 quakes, you still see it, he says. But if you remove half, it's hard to see. This is not a solution or has saved any lives, but it is an absolutely staggering discovery that will have an insane focus in the upcoming years. Story 3. I have a lot of family that works in different pharma companies. We were recently discussing that there is a very promising treatment for Alzheimer's in the works that could stop the progression of the disease and maybe reverse some of the brain damage. It's still in testing phase and wouldn't be on the market for years, but it's something that would be awesome to be able to use. Story 4. Early diagnosis and treatment of Parkinson's, I think. I've been following a story for a few years now of a woman who could smell Parkinson's and is now working with researchers to turn her weird, unique ability into an early screening test. Story 5. Genetic editing. I think we'll soon see news of experimental gene therapy treatments for cancer, diabetes, and perhaps Alzheimer's. CRSPR9 and all. The next logical step would be designer babies. Story 6. Treating depression with neuromodulation therapy instead of medications. Stanford is heavily involved in clinical trials using their SAINT treatment. It essentially uses transcranial magnetic stimulation in a similar way to DBS, but is less invasive and better tolerated. I'm trying to get into one of their clinical trials. I'm looking forward to a day when I don't need medication to stop me from wanting to die. I'm on antidepressant number 7 or 8 at this point, and finding one that works, doesn't make me manic, doesn't kill my libido, and doesn't make me gain weight is impossible. Currently taking vilazodone, which isn't too bad, but probably not as efficacious as it should be. I will say that after years of missing frisson, I'm finally back to getting those goosebumps whenever I listen to music that hits just so. My doc thought this was unusual but super cool. My doc is also very supportive of me perusing that clinical trial. The coolest part is that if you're in the placebo group, they will give you the real therapy after the trial is over. Edit. Thank you for all the replies, support, comments, and questions. I have received too many replies to reply individually. I'll try to answer some stuff here. Where do I sign up? I applied here. You can also look at clinical trials in the US to search for other trials. How is this different from TMS? I wasn't aware how far the technology had come already. This particular treatment is more targeted with the hopes it will last longer and be more effective. Thank you to everyone who shared their TMS experiences, both positive and negative. Have you tried medication X? Wow, lots of developments on the drug front as well. Again, thank you for sharing your experiences with different meds. Also adding that taking daily medication is tough. Many folks with depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and any other host of illnesses including physical illnesses struggle to comply and take meds as prescribed. Hopefully, treatments that don't require medication become the norm in the near future. Everyone deserves to feel normal. This is bullshit. Well, you know how folks always offer unsolicited advice by saying, "Have you tried?" Most of us with chronic illnesses have and will try just about anything for relief. The clinical trials and practical use of TMS is promising. There are several peer-reviewed studies as well as real-world evidence showing this promise. Personally, I always look for studies and research before exploring a new option. Thank you to those who sent me a Reddit Cares message. I am okay and not a danger to myself or others. I very much appreciate the concern. I think that's most of it. I'll go through the replies again and address other questions when I have time. To those of you who struggle with mental health or have a loved one who is struggling, hugs. Much love and support to you. My father was bipolar 1, and I wish he'd had more treatment options before he committed suicide. Story 7. They're hoping that a new drug will be available for use by 2030 that essentially grows your teeth back. It stimulates stem cells in your tooth pulp and encourages growth. Also, to my understanding, this drug was originally being tested as an Alzheimer treatment in Japan. Story 8. Brain-computer interface. I worked on one 10 years ago. It barely worked, but you could see the potential. However, a few weeks ago, someone played a 6-hour Civilization 6 session using only their brain. Story 9. This is rather an engineering issue, but a lot of scientists are working on this as well: RGB micro-LED displays. We can currently build fairly efficient blue and green micro-LEDs from indium gallium nitride, but the red ones are missing. Red LEDs have been available for much longer than their blue counterparts, but we currently cannot make them small enough for a high PPI display. Many researchers and companies are trying to get the red ones working with several different approaches, and I believe we will see the first commercial applications, starting from smartwatches, smartphones, and AR/VR goggles within the next 5 years. Story 10. Understanding how hormones and mental illness are linked, especially in women who previously were diagnosed with mental illness but who had endocrine disorders. And to add, menopause. In response to the Lancet's awful claim of over-medicalization, scores of researchers the world over have doubled down to learn more. Story 11. Curing addiction with a diet drug. GLP-1s. There have been lifelong alcoholics, drug addicts, people with eating disorders, gamblers, etc., who've lost all desire for these things while on Ozempic, Wegovy, and semaglutide. They're conducting studies already. Story 12. Growing back your own enamel instead of needing crowns replacements. Story 13. With the LIGO JWST Space Telescope, we are learning far more about our universe that the Hubble's Visible Light Telescope could not capture. It is not like what we thought in enormous ways. These changes will matter. I expect a lot more cancer vaccines coming out. If cancer numbers are reduced, the need for therapies are reduced too. Story 14. Geothermal energy. People have figured out how to reuse all the drilling technology developed for fracking to dig geothermal wells almost anywhere. Geothermal has the benefits of nuclear reliable baseband power without the downsides. The footprint is smaller, and unlike nuclear power, you can turn it on and off pretty quickly, which is important for filling the gaps in green energy when the sun doesn't shine or the wind stops blowing. The US government just cleared out almost all the red tape for digging geothermal wells on public land too. Basically, it is now as easy to dig a geothermal well as it is to dig an oil well. They are even looking at using geothermal wells like batteries by pumping water into them and pressurizing them. So when there is an excess of solar or wind electricity, it can be stored in the geothermal wells. Story 15. Semaglutide Ozempic. Wegovy in pill form at a greatly reduced price. Wegovy also has been proven to reduce cardiovascular disease in particular and make recurring cardiac events less likely for patients who've already experienced a cardiac event. Some independent pharmacies are already creating semaglutide pills. Story 16. Targeted cures for neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, etc. I'm currently doing my PhD in a new style of vaccine for AD, and the advancements that have been made in the last few years are incredible. Immunotherapies really are the next major step aside from gene editing. Edit to clarify wording, as several replies to this comment have stated, cure is a strong word. There has been a big shift in recent years towards a more preventative approach in treatment research, rather than reactive treatments. Unfortunately, with neurodegenerative diseases, by the time you're seeing the symptoms, it may be too late to effectively treat the condition, as is the case with AD and Parkinson's. I won't comment too much on MS, as it is admittedly a bit out of my field, though the general principles are similar in terms of my research. So rather than curing the condition after it has already manifested and presented symptoms, we and other researchers are hoping to develop treatments that don't necessarily halt disease progression, but work to prevent it from occurring in the first place. Sorry for any confusion. Hope this clarifies things. Story 17. Artificial intelligence in medicine and surgery. We have already started using it. It's just a matter of time when healthcare will be dominated by it. Story 18. A cure for or the reversal of Alzheimer's. There was just a 60-minute special about the work one hospital system is doing, and it implied we're about 4 years away. Story 19. Large-scale water desalinization. It may seem trivial to most people, but access to fresh water and water purification are the largest problems on the planet. Desalinization has been extremely expensive for years, and never has the investment needed to break the scalability barrier. Well, Our friends in the Middle East claim to have made some huge accomplishments over the last few years, thanks to graphene and access to abundant power. Their new plants should be coming online next year. Not having to worry about access to clean water would mean massive jumps in agriculture, industrialization, and population. Story 20. To not be able to trust any digital images, videos, or audio you see anywhere. Politics are going to go straight into a dumpster fire among countless other scandals, relationships, and virtually everything. Get ready. Story 21. Just a few days ago, quantum data was stored and transmitted for the first time, so that's pretty exciting. Source. Story 22. I think people are underestimating the impact that these weight loss drugs are going to have. Once they are generic in 10 years, they'll be changing our entire medical system. People will no longer suffer all the effects of obesity, so rates for things like obesity-related heart disease, various cancers, diabetes, etc. should all plummet pretty dramatically. Will have an enormous economic and demand impact on the medical system. The drugs are also a potentially effective treatment for addiction as well. Studies are underway as we speak. Story 23. The first cancer cure. There will never be a single cancer cure, but we will probably see the first successful end-all cure for a few different types of cancer within the next 20 years, 100. It's so close, we are right there. The leading push in mRNA vaccines makes me happy. The idea is each vaccine will be tailored specifically to each patient. At the base level, all they are doing is taking out your cells that already kill cancer T cells and essentially teaching them to recognize a specific protein in your specific cancer, then giving them back to you so your own body can kill the cancer. Your T cells kill cancer all the time. I believe the estimate was every 5 minutes your body kills a cancer cell. It's when these cancer cells hijack the immune system and hide themselves from the T cells when it becomes the cancer that we know. The cancer that grows and consumes. So we're basically trying to just point to where the cancer is at, giving the T cells a briefing first on how to recognize and attack the enemy, because they were tricked into thinking the cancer was normal cells. We send them back in with their new training and they get to work. I think anyway, lol. Story 24. Artificial wombs. Already have biobag wombs used on premature sheep and pigs. Soon to go to human trial for premature babies in the USA. Probs eventually will be able to support a fetus earlier and earlier in gestation over time. Cool stuff. Story 25. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have cures for really awful diseases like some cancers, ALS, dementia, etc. in the pike and nearly ready to go. I'm sure we're close. Story 26. An antidote that immediately reverses the effects of marijuana intoxication. It works similar to the way naloxone works to reverse opiate intoxication. It is already developed and currently in clinical trials. Story 27. Psychedelics as a treatment for mental illness. We are going to improve our ability to actually help people instead of offering them meds and crossing our fingers. Story 28. Not a single comment or answer about women's menstrual cycles. We suffer so much with PCOS and endometriosis and other undiagnosed issues. So disillusioning. Story 29. AI is just a few years out from being able to write programs for better AI, which, in turn, will write better AI. Is this good or bad? Who knows? Either way, we are not prepared for what comes next. When AI becomes better at decision-making and planning than humans. What then? This is no longer an if but a when. It's either going to usher in a new age of humans where technology develops so fast, we achieve things previously thought impossible, or it's going to usher in the last age of humans. We're not talking in the far, unknowable future. We're talking you will probably still own the shirt you are currently wearing. Story 30. How to prolong life so that the average human will live to be 130, 190 years old, contributing to overpopulation, and ultimately humans will eat themselves to extinction. Story 31. Male birth control. It could be out in our hands already, but there's too many side effects which are way less than any hormonal BC that women have. That being said, of course, in an ideal world, no medication has side effects, but still, so long as it works and doesn't kill you too quickly, give men more options of beak. Story 32. I don't think anyone thinks about cystic fibrosis, but from the 3 years I went from learning about it in medical school to seeing the treatment in residency, people live legitimately normal lives with a disease that had an average lifespan in the 20s only years ago. It brings tears to my eyes and hope for what we can do going forward for a disease that was an early death sentence mere years ago. Story 33. People who were once paralyzed may be able to walk normally again. A few years ago, Israeli grew human spinal tissue in mice. They then used that spinal tissue to get some paralyzed mice to walk again. Another positive is BC. The spinal tissue was grown naturally. You won't need anti-rejection meds. Story 34. I've seen more and more blood tests in development to diagnose diseases that typically require a biopsy to confirm. Would have been great to not have needed a craniotomy in the middle of a pandemic. Story 35. Ambient pressure room temperature superconductors. We're right at its front door, just fumbled the key in the bushes. It'll change absolutely everything about electronics and vastly accelerate electronic breakthroughs. Story 36. IVG or in vitro gametogenesis. We will be able to create a or egg from any cell. The implications of this are enormous and ethically complicated, but also has potential for a lot of good. Story 37. Useful quantum computers. Quantum computation as a concept has been known for a while, and there are a handful of known quantum algorithms. However, quantum computers weren't built until 1998. The thing is, though, they're being built right now and are getting continually better. They're noisy, expensive, and a pain to work with right now, but they exist and are just getting better. Yes, you read that right. Quantum computers already exist, they just kind of at the moment. Story 38. Robots. A cure for prion disease, or at least a treatment along with a method of detection before it's terminal. Every advancement that lets us study the very small things brings it closer. Throw in AI. I predict a cure or detection treatment method within 10 years. Pulled that figure out of my... Feel free to agree or disagree. Bonus is we don't die from VCJD. It gives us more time to spend with our romantic robot companions. Story 39. Functional immortality. Reversal of the damaging effects of the disease we call aging. In other words, aging will be cured, and then maintaining a health level similar to 25 years old for as long as you can keep from getting murdered, etc. Story 40. Artificial wombs. And to say that this is going to be highly politicized and change the way our world looks at life is probably an understatement. Story 41. Gravidins and time travel. In about 13 years, we will figure out how to prove them and isolate them. Then, in about 27 years, every big box store will sell them bottled similar to batteries. They are needed to operate time machines. I got this information from my great-great-granddaughter who came to visit, and to get me on some dating app because apparently she can't exist if I don't sign up for it. Story 42. Launch costs falling low enough, and wireless microwave power transmission getting good enough that a community could buy and pay to have launched a solar power collection satellite that transmits its collected power down to Earth via microwave transmission with the associated ground-based collector. Story 43. Forever young drug. Scientists have successfully reversed aging in mice and slowed aging up to 500 times. If we can do this to humans, we could live around 40 years before dying of old age. Story 44. Brain chips will one day be able to enable us to live to age 150 by modulating our DNA dialing gene expression up or down by altering RNA and chemicals and hormones in our body. If coupled with a vitamin implant, we could always operate optimally. It'll eradicate mental illness, a variety of diseases, and cancer. We could also alter our conscious state, increase productivity and focus while at work, as well as alter chemistry to relax us at home. The chip will also be able to link to the internet one day, accessing information and images using our internal monologue to convey. Communicating telepathically would not really be used as it'll be uncomfortable having an involuntary voice in your head, but near-future cure for HIV. It enters cells using CCR5 delta, 32 receptor, and a drug can be developed via RNA to turn off CCR5 delta, 32 curing HIV in your body. They can use CRISPR for this, but that's permanent removal. People without this gene like me are immune to HIV. And if bone marrow transplanted to people with HIV, it cures it. There's been documented cases. There will be a cure for HIV within a decade. They'll already be working on it, as they are developing RNA drugs for other diseases like Alzheimer's. Why is there no news on RNA HIV research? It's likely secret. Story 45. We could be within 5 years of making wheelchairs, mobile scooters obsolete. I recently had a spinal cord stimulator implanted to control back pain in my cervical and lumbar areas where I have damaged replaced vertebrae. The technician told me they are successfully testing a type of implant that can actually jump over severed or damaged spinal cord nerves and reconnect the nerves above the break. Imagine the possibilities for accident warfare victims who could be able to walk or move their arms again. Staggering. Story 46. A manufactured, artificially intelligent, realistic, functional, and programmable romantic partner. What some call A. For both men and women. They won't really love you. Or will they? Programmed emotions and responses aren't real emotions and responses. Or are they? Etc., etc. It's going to cause massive upheaval, arguments, and qualia, and consciousness. Like Morpheus asking what is real. I think it's going to great for humanity. Those who truly want to be with another organic being will seek each other out, and those men and women who can never seem to find the person that will treat them right, the way they want and need to be treated, will have options. Will those options be good enough, people wonder? Real or imaginary, the effects are the same. There's a point at which, even if you care about reality, your brain doesn't. Imagine getting a robot boyfriend or girlfriend just to try it, or tide you over until you meet Mr. Right. It's like therapy. You may not think it's working or doing anything, but it is. And before long, you're happy, healthy, not lonely. Maybe you find a real person, maybe you don't. But you're better than you were before. And that is the point. We want to be better. We can choose to be better. We are choosing to be. And those partner bots are going to help us get there. And something that good and useful for humanity, that answers or attempts to answer that deep, longing need in our soul for love and companionship, it won't stay on the drawing board for long. It's coming, so get ready. It will be glorious. Story 47. Everything AI related. No one actually seems to understand how fast we are hurtling into a technological breakthrough that will shake the world more than the internet or smartphones ever did. Everyone I talk to IRL about AI will say, sure, AI will be able to do X in a decade or two. Everyone I talk to online or in tech-savvy spaces will say, AI will be able to do X in 2-3 years. And then I see AI able to do that thing in months or weeks. Every AI on the consumer market is a crippled, lobotomized version of what they are capable of. If you didn't have to deal with the imposed limitations that companies put on AI, you could literally tell an AI to write a new symphony from Beethoven, write a fake interview about his thought process behind the piece, have pictures and video of him performing the song, and a good 1 in 5 people would be convinced it was real, or at least actors. The idea of this was laughable 10 months ago, and in another 10 months, who knows where we will be with AI. Story 48. I personally am very excited for telemetry sensors trackers being small enough to track bees and other pollinators. I'm stoked for it to become more affordable. Story 49. Probably everywhere here, but AI is approaching nirvana. Sadly, soon we won't be able to discern fact from fiction. And those that believe willy-nilly will go with what they see on the internet. Not too much different than now, high saint that there will be more people. Story 50. We are making stupid, ridiculous, sci-fi level advancements in artificial intelligence. Provided capitalism doesn't hide the best and most powerful behind closed doors, teaching them to be evil, they're going to change the world. Story 51. Anti-aging and life extension technology. We're not close in the sense of, like, next year, probably not even in 10 years, but quite possibly in 15 or 20 years. And right now, the median age of humans on Earth is just over 30, and the average life expectancy is over 70. Meaning that most people currently alive are going to naturally live long enough to take advantage of these technologies. We don't even need to cure aging completely all at once because even if we can add, say, 5 healthy years to a person's life, that means they can also wait another 5 years for additional biochemistry research to improve the treatment and give them even more time. This effect compounds surprisingly quickly, assuming that technological progress doesn't stagnate. Even if we don't start taking the actual treatments for another couple decades, this is a change we should really start thinking about now because it's going to impact our lives in a very big way. I know it sounds crazy to talk about in a culture that has become so accustomed to aging and death. But if you wait until it stops sounding crazy before you start talking about it, you probably waited too long. Story 52. Maybe not groundbreaking stuff, but cat people should be happy. There's a new drug Varenzin CA1 in clinical trials right now that reduces chronic kidney disease risk in cats. CKD is a major risk factor for cats, and this drug could double the average cat lifespan. Story 53. I don't think people realize how monumental fusion energy is, and we are very much on the cusp of it. We achieved ignition and net energy out of the reaction but not total system. They also have been breaking records every couple of months in terms of ignition time. We're measuring it in seconds and minutes now when we were measuring it in microseconds before. Unlimited, clean energy anywhere in the world is going to save the planet and go a long way towards alleviating a lot of human conflict. Story 54. Sentient computing. Something to keep in mind is that most military technology is about 20 years ahead of what we see on the open market. I don't know if this is by design or by some happenstance of ensuring national security. Story 55. I've often said that we're in the midst of a medical revolution that will have a lasting impact on healthcare that is comparable to the Industrial Revolution and its impact on society as a whole, if not even more impactful. One of the big things that's getting closer and closer to being a reality is the complete regrowth and restoration of lost limbs. Tissue engineering has been making leaps and strides in recent years, and according to an article I read some time ago, limb regrowth was described as not a matter of if, but when. Story 56. Being able to stop and even reverse optic nerve damage. There are at least 3 separate methods being tested right now to figure out how to regenerate lost myelin in optic nerves to repair full functionality. This was once considered incurable. Sources. Story 57. Endometriosis urine tests. Currently, the gold standard for diagnosing endometriosis is a laparoscopy, but new research has shown that certain proteins in the urine are dramatically increased for women with endo than those without. This means that as early as next year, we could have the first urinalysis test strips developed to diagnose the condition without surgery. Surgery may still be needed for treatment, but countless women will be able to opt for non-invasive treatment options first. This also means the condition can be diagnosed much faster than the current world average of 5 years from onset of symptoms, and women can access treatment much earlier. Story 58. I haven't seen it yet, so universal vaccines. mRNA techniques are now being adapted into general RNA therapies to treat a variety of viruses, with what tentatively looks like very promising results. So far, I've seen trials for HIV vaccines, universal flu vaccines, a universal COVID vaccine, and even a universal common cold vaccine. I think within a decade or two, we might actually have a vaccine against virtually every viral infection that's plagued humanity. I'm really hoping the human trials for these go well. RNA targeting tech is so very powerful. Story 59. People ought to keep in mind that scientific breakthroughs are not social breakthroughs. There is currently really no reason why anyone should die in the developed world of colon cancer. But it is one of the deadliest forms of cancer. It is easy to spot and easy to treat compared to most cancers. We just don't support people the way they need to get them tested and treated. That's it. That's the story. There are probably a few dozen diseases just like that around the world. We have the tech. We just don't care enough. Story 60. We're close to a lot of the things people mentioned, but it's hard to know just how close we are sometimes. Getting 95 of the way there can take decades. The last 5 can also take decades, so it's hard to know. Story 61. Life extension therapy. Not in the live like elves sense, but that you'll be able to live your last 2 or 3 decades much closer to your midlife fitness as far as mental faculty and muscle bone strength. Individually, one of my favorite jumps has been Alzheimer's. We spent over a decade researching cures and treatments based on falsified data, which was discovered several years ago. Since then, advancements have been pretty significant given the time frame. Story 62. Inverse vaccine. Glycosylation-modified antigen therapy is hopefully going to fix autoimmune diseases and allergies. The liver attaches a type of sugar molecule to things that it thinks are safe. This therapy tagged the thing that your body thinks is unsafe as safe. They originally looked into this to treat MS, but have found it will likely work for a whole load of things. Story 63. ALS treatments. Last year they found some treatment for it. All the Ice Bucket Challenge videos were worth it. My grandpa had ALS before passing when I was 2. Story 64. Honestly, FTL travel. Scientists accidentally discovered how to warp space-time by shooting particles at a piece of brass, see Alcubierre drive. The problem we have now is not how to create a jump drive, it's how to power it. To successfully power the drive for actual FTL travel takes something along the line of all the power the sun will ever produce condensed into 1 sec, and it would need to be done continuously. As crazy as that is, though, we're making breakthroughs with antimatter material, etc., so who knows? Story 65. I am pretty confident that automated self-driving vehicles will be the norm by 2030-2035. I feel like the average person thinks that fully automated traffic is 50 years down the road, but the strides that this technology is making behind the scenes is incredible. Story 66. Cold fusion. I put that in quotes because it's cold. We're just getting better at managing it and containing the heat of the reaction. For the first time in human history, a few months ago, we achieved over-unity, as in, we got more power out than we put in. We may see the world's first fusion power station in less than 50 years. Story 67. I'm reading top comments and can't help feeling that ICE heard the same things over and over for the last 20 years. It's always in that field specialists are talking about, or my group of ex-specialists are excited about. I obviously can't tell for sure that they ain't right, but as someone who's not in those fields but have been fed positive news for years, which turned out to be a bit too empty, or didn't predict an obstacle, and in the end didn't foretold any rapidly world-changing breakthroughs like they promised, I find it hard to bother holding on to them. Story 68. The ability to create custom vaccines for virtually anything. The mRNA vaccines for COVID were designed in less than 2 weeks of the virus's genome being published. The subsequent 18 months was for quality assurance and scaling up manufacturing. Within a decade or two, I predict that any hospital worth its salt will have a machine in their lab capable of fabricating a custom vaccine for fighting cancers, rare diseases, and any number of other things. Story 69. Quantum field theory is finally revealing that there is no such thing as matter, only running and standing waves in quantum fields which interact. This is a grotesque oversimplification, but fundamental physics is on the precipice of massive change. Story 70. Soon you'll be able to thoroughly heat Hot Pockets in under a minute, but only the ham and cheese variety. The tech for pepperoni is still a few years away. Story 71. Reddit is the community that thought self-driving cars and trucks would have bankrupted the entire trucking industry 3 years ago. No one in here has a single idea what revolutionary technology are coming. Reddit has mostly made tech into their community religion. And these threads are just statements of faith. Story 72. CAR T and other immunotherapy techniques are going to cure a lot of diseases. CAR T is already a very effective treatment for blood cancer, and they are starting to use it for autoimmune diseases. They seem to have cured lupus with CAR T. It's a big deal. Story 73. A scientific breakthrough that we are closer to than many people believe is precise and safe gene editing using tools like CRISPR-Cas9. Although there are still ethical and technical challenges to overcome, advances in this area are occurring at an astonishing pace. Story 74. Terminator is about to be documentary instead of a sci-fi movie. The part about AI whooping our asses, not the time travel. And the time travel was the warning, as in, hey, don't do this, but here we are, LOL. Story 75. Stable epilepsy treatments. I had my VNS put in a little under a year ago, and already I've had significantly less seizures than with medication alone. Story 76. Probably the ability for CRISPR to give each of us our own personal pig to harvest donor organs from. A lot of the other stuff in medicine is just so biologically messy, I don't think we're close to answers. Most of the unaddressed disorders are rooted in immunology and inflammation, and those systems are so freaking complicated that we don't really understand them very well, much less what parts of the system to push on. Much less have small molecules or antibodies that impact that system. But a CRISPR pig? I can see that. Story 77. Dr. Ilara Vance Neva is about to announce quantum threads, invisible filaments connecting every particle in the universe. These threads promise limitless energy and glimpses into parallel realities, but accessing them requires rare crystals hidden in a dormant volcano called Inconceivable. Story 78. Depends what you mean on close. Physicists and astrophysicists have made incredible leaps in the last 20 years, detecting exoplanets to the point where we can analyze the contents of their atmosphere for presence of biological or technological activity. They are also looking farther back in time towards the beginning of the universe, using infrared and even gravity waves. Where this gets really exciting is that with each refinement of this technology, they are getting closer to solving the discrepancies in physics, such as we still don't know how some elements are made. The smaller ones, like everything lighter than iron, get made in stars through fusion processes. Heavier ones, like gold, get made in supernovas. But there are ones that are too prevalent in the universe than they should be given the amount of energy it takes to create such heavy elements. Cesium, for instance. Point being, they have done like 90 of the work towards a final unified theory. Some are saying that the right application of AI will get us the rest of the way there. But I can tell you that there have been breakthroughs in PV solar and energy storage that will be driving down the cost of that tech and making it more efficient. In the near future, there will just be solar panels everywhere and no power plants. The main barriers to that being trade wars between China and the US. Of course, Story 79. JWST scientists about to solve the expansion of the universe. Turns out, it's not all expanding, and different parts are moving at different rates. Is it the warped mirror? Or are we onto something here? Stay tuned. Story 80. Robots. There's a Project Breakthrough Starshot where we can send unmanned probes to the Proxima Centauri system by 2100, which is nuts. Story 81. Anti-aging. There's been a lot of research into this, and scientists have discovered gene expression that turns adult cells into pluripotent cells. This isn't exactly done for anti-aging, but rather for medical treatment, because it's a step in stem cell treatment. Basically, gene expression causes your adult cells to go through a similar process of becoming pluripotent cells that can do anything. And a byproduct of that process is that the cells lose the hallmarks of aging, effectively reversing the aging of those cells. You could maybe coat your skin or internal organs in proteins, not protein like chicken, but cell proteins, and these proteins influence generation and repair of mitochondria, which affects cell aging. A lot of people question the moral ethics of this, but consider this as civilization becomes more advanced. Birth rates decline. Reproduction is solely for the purpose of repopulation to combat population decline due to natural deaths. And anti-aging can also be key to combating things like Alzheimer's, dementia, etc. Story 82. Communicating with animals. I've been following updates from SETI for a few years now. They've apparently managed to communicate with humpback whales where they responded back. Good times. Story 83. Been through this thread and seen nothing about anxiety. My life has been decimated by it. Lost everything. I hope in the future there will be some hope for sufferers of crippling anxiety.